Hey everyone, I'm Brian Sparks, editor of Greenhouse Grower, back in the studio with Alan Armitage. Alan, how are you today?
I'm well, thank you, Brian. Very well indeed.
Excellent, excellent. So, we've been talking a lot about, especially with California spring trials coming up, some of the new plants that growers are going to be growing here in the near future and that you're going to be seeing at garden centers. When you take a step back from that, there's the breeding process that goes into those plants, and that can sometimes take years of development, frankly, a lot of years of trial and error to come out with the varieties that work best. I want to just get your perspective on that critical role that the breeding companies play in getting those plants from development through to when they're actually going to be being produced in the greenhouse.
Well, gosh, that's a huge topic from the point of view of what is accomplished in the marketplace by the plant breeding community. We sometimes think of plant breeders as those people employed by the big companies like the Balls and the Syngentas and the and all of these other large companies we see, for instance, at California Spring Trials.
Yeah.
But we also have a number of independent breeders
Hmm.
that are also, I think it's in their blood, Brian. I think it's actually an obsession. A plant breeder is kind of just can't help themselves. They're a breederaholic, like an alcoholic. They just can't help themselves. They're going to breed something regardless. But the independent breeders are those who, we seldom hear about, but who the big companies are working with, and perhaps their materials will get into a Ball program or a Proven Winner program or whoever. And so there's a lot of things going in the background that we don't know anything about. And by the way, I think Greenhouse Grower and the Medal of Excellence have recognized a number of these independent breeders. And it's just fun to be able to see what they do and get them in the sunshine. And all breeders are kind of like that. I think most breeders would just prefer not to talk to anybody.
Yeah.
They just want to work on their plants and don't bother me, and I'll get something out for you to look at. And but having said that, like you said, it takes a long time. They have an idea, and talking to breeders, they don't just, well, most of them don't just breed for breeding's sake. They're actually looking for characteristics that will improve the crop that they are working on. Whether, again, it's an annual, and what's the breeding we see has to do with bedding plants,
Mm.
or a perennial, so they can improve perhaps the hardiness, or a plant that really needs help with disease resistance. We look at good old American phlox. It was riddled with, powdery mildew and other things for years and years, and now we have better than what we had before. So those are the characteristics that a plant breeder is looking at. How can I improve it? Compactness has
Yeah.
been a huge, um, just a huge thing about how to make plants better. And now whether they are better for the end user, i.e. the landscaper gardener, or they are better because they ship easier,
Yeah.
that's another whole discussion, but better in some respect. And as again, we'll finish up this with what they're doing. Maybe better is faster,
Yeah.
i.e. from a seed to a finished product, or from a cutting to a finished product. This particular cultivar gets there quicker, and in a perennial may not need cold. So all of these are what the breeder does in the back room. And then what we see, um, hopefully, is a beautiful plant.
Yeah.
And what is marketed are those characteristics that hopefully the breeder has brought to the table. So
Yeah.
it's really kind of cool how all this works. And as a professor of horticulture, when young students would come up to me and say, where so many things to do, I'd say, if you can get yourself involved in the breeding of plants, I don't care if it's a tomato, an eggplant, or a banana tree, if you can get the ideas of how to breed a plant, boy, oh boy, you're golden, because we can always use more people who are creative and know the tools of breeding.
Well, and speaking of people, and I know you mentioned a couple minutes ago, shining a spotlight on some of those independent breeding companies. There's also the people behind the process. And in Greenhouse Growers January issue, both in the print issue, and then you can find it online as well at greenhousegrower.com, we've tried to shine a spotlight on some of these new and emerging breeders and some of the new things that they're working on. And then also just the different ways that they approach the process of breeding, some of the tools that they may have available today that the previous generation of breeders didn't have. I mean, just to look and see where things are going to be moving in the future is going to be really interesting.
It is. There's much different tools, for sure. It used to be the old paintbrush for putting the pollen on the flower, but boy, there's a ton of tools now that breeders can use. And to say they're well educated, they're creative, and they know what they're doing. And by the way, just to end this thing, if it wasn't for a breeder, we probably wouldn't have the industry because we have to have new plants. We just have to have plants.
Yeah.
So let's put that in perspective too. And kudos to all of them.
Absolutely. And you can learn again more about those folks in our January issue and on greenhousegrower.com. And then also if you're going to California Spring Trials, I'm sure a lot of them will be there as well. So Alan, great to catch up again today, and we will talk again soon.
Good. All the best, everybody.